Good afternoon, good morning. My name is Stacy Wambuga, and it's my pleasure to take you through the second session of our symposium. I'm going to invite our next speaker, Professor Omowunmi Sadik, who is going to give us valuable insights on the role of sustainable nanotechnology in achieving safer foods. A little bit about Dr. Sadik. She's a distinguished professor and director of the BioSmart Center at the New Jersey Institute of Technology, with previous positions at Cornell University, Harvard University, and the US Environmental Protection Agency. Her research focuses on electrochemical interfaces and developing bioanalytical sensors technologies to enhance human health and environmental monitoring. She has created sensors for pain assessment, detecting heavy metals, proteins, and organic acids, as well as portable autonomous sensing instrument called the UPAC. Dr. Sadik is a fellow of several prestigious organizations, including the American Chemical Society and the National Academy of Investors. Welcome, Dr. Sadik.
Thank you for that introduction. Thank you for inviting me. I'm going to be sharing my slides. Can you see what I'm showing?
Yes, I can see them.
Okay, thank you. Let me make it full. Okay, so can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thanks a lot for the invitation. I'm pleased to present some of the work we've been doing here at the New Jersey Institute of Technology on sustainable nanosensors for safer foods. I will give you some examples of how nanotechnology and in general chemistry is helping to achieve safer foods through new pesticides, developing technologies to access the influence of toxins and microbes that may be impacting food production. So chemistry is playing a major role in safer foods. It plays in the area of safe foods from harvesting, post-harvest loss, food utilization, biofortification, food processing, essential medicines, and food security in general. And in particular, sustainable nanotechnology. According to the Sustainable Development Goals, the number 2 goal is zero hunger. We've heard a lot about that this morning already. How to achieve zero hunger, achieve food security, improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. And the goal, of course, is by 2030, we would like to end hunger and ensure that everyone, particularly those vulnerable, you've heard the lectures earlier about certain areas of our population that have been impacted negatively about food. And so, but what is sustainability? Sustainability means different things to different people. But in general, there are 3 pillars. You know, you have the people, the planet, and the profits. In terms of the people, you look at the measurements of education, equity, and access to social resources. With the planets, you also look at the measurements of natural resources and influences of viability. And of course, for profits, we all know what that is. However, in particular for sustainable nanotechnology, we're looking at green chemistry, safer by design. When you look at nano, you design them to be safe, by design. You look for responsible development at the corporate level. You look at the development of new tools, as well as the implications of nano. For those who may not be familiar, there is an organization called the Sustainable Nanotechnology Organization, SNO, whose goals would be to look at the research, as well as the education and responsible development. So I encourage you to take a look at this website, www.sourcenano.org. And so now let's talk about how we are using chemistry tools and sensor tools and nanotechnology for safer foods. If you take a look at how to make nano materials of different shapes and sizes. And some of these you can use actually to address toxins and fungals and microbes. And these are examples of some of the molecules that we have made. These are mainly from quercetins that derive from fruits and vegetables. And we're making nanoparticles from naturally derived ligands. We also use sugars. We make glycoconjugates from sugars, and many of these are fluorescent in nature. In particular, we're using things like lactose and galactose and many types of sugars, and we study the interactions. Another aspect that we're using are flavonoids. Flavonoids, we've made different series, the 3 series, 4 series, and 5 series. So I'm not going to go into the details of the chemistry because that's not the purpose of this meeting. I'm just showing you that to give you a sense of how chemistry is impacting food, safer foods and food production, and in particular nano. We cannot talk about nano without looking at their structures, looking at their microscopic structures, transmission electron microscope, XRGs. All the sense of this is that even when you use naturally occurring ligands, the materials are still nano in nature. So now let's talk about how nano is being used to address the issue of foods. Fusarium is a fungi group with very broad impact on food and drug industry. It affects humans, it also affects plants. And Penicillium italicum is another organism that we've looked at using our nanotechnology to affect them. Typically, it affects citrus, especially when they're in the moist conditions. So we looked at copper. Here's an article for those who are interested. This is the details of that. We made nanoparticles and we look at these organisms, and it literally was used to obliterate them. Now, I want to focus on a project that was funded by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where it was actually jointly funded by the US National Science Foundation as well. We're developing a paper-based diagnostic for smallholder farmers. And it is based on a small smartphone where you have nano materials incorporated on the sensors, and it helps farmers on the field to ascertain the presence of some of these toxins very early on, things that will ordinarily affect their yield. And so in particular, we're looking at an organism called Collectotrichum glosporioides. So here's the technology. There are 2 parts to it. You have a sensing component, you have the microbial battery component. And essentially, the microbial battery uses the microbe to generate a very small amount of energy to drive the sensor. And this is how it looks like. It's based on paper. It's low cost. The idea from Bill Gates Foundation is that this should be less than $1 in terms of the cost to the smallholder farmers. And we provide them with this handheld device where they can take a small amount of waste and they can test their, just a paper strip to test the presence of the organisms. In particular, we've tested this for several organisms, but this particular is a Collectotrichum. And I'm going to show you how we're using this in smallholder farms. We're looking at the problem of anthracnose. So anthracnose typically infect sweet yams. It is, you can see smallholder farmers here in Jamaica, and we're there on the field. Typically, they use topsin, and topsin and even glider, it doesn't work for the problem. And in particular, they're looking at this for yams. yams are not potatoes. Yams are tubers. I can see the picture of the yams right there. They are mostly produced a lot in Africa. Nigeria is the largest producer of yams in the world. It's used in Asia. It's used as foods. It's also used in many forms. There are different, even to extract chemicals from it. But the problem here is in Jamaica. Over several years, there's been a gradual decline in the production of sweet yams because of anthracnose disease. And so we worked with the Rural Agricultural Development Authority, the RADA, to see how we can test the nano sensors and the nanomaterials to address this issue. So here's one farm, young farm in Jamaica. This is another Cockland farm. We adopted 20 farmers, smallholder farmers, and we tested our technology, and we looked at the yield over time to see the impact of it. So I'm just going to show you some of the results. So when there is anthracnose, typically for a very healthy yam, it's green and lush. The yams is underneath, is a tuber. So the farmer comes in for months, tending the tubers and hoping for a good harvest. However, a few weeks before harvest, they start noticing some yellowing of the leaves. By the time they dig in, the yield is gone. There's no yams there. And so we adopted some of these, and we applied our nanomaterials. We also apply our sensor on the field. And these are some of the fungi that we found. It wasn't clear exactly what is responsible for the anthracnose disease, but it's believed that you have the Polectotrichum as the main organism. But what we found was different. We found that it's actually a whole lot of Fusarium, Oxysporum. There are some Fusarium species, but mostly what we were looking for is the Polectotrichum, those varieties, and they were there. They were excited, they were extracted from this, and they were treated with some of our ligands with nano. And we found also, we looked at the morphological identification. In addition to Fusarium, there were others, like Penicillium. There were mostly what we thought was there. And not only was this done in the field, they were also done in the lab. So where you will culture the plants and expose them to many of the nanomaterials and also the sensor to look at them. So, but the overall issue of finding was that we looked at yield, the yield of the yams as a measure of disease severity. So at harvest, all the sweet yam plants have symptoms of yam if they've been intentionally infected with those anthracnose. So we looked at yam, we looked at the weight. There were some biometric studies that were done. As you can see here, these are very bad yams, really. They are stunted, they're not very good if they've been infected with anthracnose. But when you take a look at after treatment with the nanomaterials, you find that the weight of the tubers versus different controls. Here's the negative control. Here's when we use topsin, which is what the farmers, the RADA extension farmers, they were encouraged to use. Then we tested some of them with our different nanos, different formulations, some sugars, some flavonoids, different formulations of our nano. And overall, we found that the mean tuber weight for the control, as well as the nano supported ones, for the negative control, they were comparable. For the topsin, when the control with the topsins, we found that there's a mixed result, especially when you mix the topsin with the nano, the results are impressive. So we came up with a theory. that the fertilizer effect, that the nanoparticles are actually creating a nanoparticle effect. When the nanoparticles, when you treated them without the compound, which is our ligand, we found that the plant growth is inversely proportional to the concentration. So the nanoparticle caused the growth to become concentrated in tubers, and the yield was directly proportional. We attributed this to the fertilizer effect. For the nano with some sugars, and then you mix them with pepsin, as well as with our flavonoids, we noticed that there's a great foliage growth. The plants, the leaves grow very well, but relatively the slow storage tubers, possibly because the nanoparticles nullify the effect. So it did not have any fertilizer effect. And for the controls, the plants are contributed long. We attribute that to hypersensitivity effect. So overall, because all the plants had a significant amount of necrosis at harvest, we assume that the sweet plants have a natural mutualistic relationship with this organism, and then the fungus is widespread. So pepsin produces good yield, it kills the viruses, it affects the plants, but it does not yield. The yield is very, very low in terms of the tubers. And so we concluded that, the reason that the plants, the role of the nanoparticles is also as it's giving a fertilizer effect. So it does not kill them. It gives a fertilizer effect on them. So what did we conclude? We concluded that the nanoparticles, in particular those that are created using primarily sugar-based ligands, there's a positive effect on the yield of the plant. For those with flavonoids, there is a positive fertilizer effect that we notice. When you mix the topsin with the nanomaterials, you found that there's an opposing effect right there. So the topsin actually affects their immune system. But it doesn't kill them. Yes, the foliage will grow very well, but the yield, the tubers are very, very stunted. And so it's not a positive effect. So overall, we found that when this is being tested in the field, there's a high potential for the nano materials to be used as a tool to address the effect of anthracnose disease on sweet yam. This can also be extended to other crops, maybe tomatoes or cassavas or other food crops. So the essential thing here, the take-home message is that chemistry is helping to achieve zero hunger through the use of sustainable precision nanosensors that we can prepare at a very low cost, and that can be made available to smallholder farmers, particularly in developing countries, that the nanomaterials have this nanofertilizer effect. They enhance the immune system of the plant, and so ultimately chemistry is helping to achieve food security, helping to improve nutrition, helping to promote sustainable agriculture. And so I'll be more than happy to answer any question that you have. I'd like to acknowledge the people who are doing the work, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the National Science Foundation of the US for funding, and some of our collaborators, the writer collaborators in Jamaica, and I am happy to answer any question you have.
Thank you, Dr. Sadik, for that wonderful presentation. I just have one question. What are the potential environmental impacts of using nanotech in agriculture, and how can we mitigate this while still reaping the benefits of food production?
Thank you. That's an excellent question. As you know, a lot of people, in fact, in the early days of nano, there was a resistance in terms of how is it that we have no idea what the unintended consequences might be of using these technologies. So you have people on one hand who felt that nano is bad. And then you have the other, on the other hand, that will feel that nano can be used for everything, nano medicine, nano things. But we have seen that so far there's been no showstopper. Nano is being used in agriculture now. It's been, if anybody has taken any of the COVID-19 vaccines, we have nano in your blood. And so there has been, yes, the initial concern, but as you see, that's what we call it sustainable nano, because we're using sugars, we're using flavonoids, we're using naturally occurring materials to make nano themselves. We are exposed to nano every day of our lives, from, from air all around, the soil, they're there. And so there has been no showstopper. Yes, there is a concern, but the benefit outweighs the concerns.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.